my friends. Welcome back to the Non-Toxic Environment Show. This is your host, Andy Pace. On our show this week, we have actually a client of mine who is in the process of building a healthy home in Georgia. I started working with John and his family about 6 months ago to help the design process, and now we're starting the initial phases of construction. Now, John, like many who I work with, also navigates a full-time job. John has young children, so John has essentially 3 jobs now because not only is he a father and does he have a full-time job, but he's also now general contracting his own project, and we'll get into that in a bit on the show. John also happens to be a country music star and a touring artist, and so he's gone quite a bit of the year on tour. And so today we talk about what it's like, life on tour, what it's like to be away from home, and why they are so looking forward to having their own healthy, healing sanctuary to come home to. And it's just so exciting for them for this process. And so I think you'll really enjoy the show. And please make sure, hit the subscribe button and like this episode. Make sure that others can find it as well. Share it with friends. And again, thanks for joining. John, my friend, so very happy to have you on the show this week.
Dude, I'm a fan of yours first and foremost, Andy. So I feel like I'm sort of like geeking out that I'm on like a podcast that I listen to all the time right now. This is a dream come true.
That's awesome, and I feel the same way too. I'm here. I'm interviewing, quote unquote, a recording artist, a touring recording artist, and you do this for a living. You perform to the masses for a living. I record a little show here in Wisconsin and broadcast it out, via YouTube and iTunes and whatnot. And it's mutual. Let me tell you, it's absolutely mutual.
Well, I listen to your podcast when we're on the way to play those shows all over the country. And so this is, it's funny how I feel like a lot of country artists, a lot of touring artists, we have like these hobbies, to me, it's been like the health and wellness space. Like it's been an area of focus for me the last couple of years. So that's how I got connected with my buddy Ryan Sternagel, who introduced me to what you're doing.
Sure.
And obviously we're going to go into that, but yeah, man, it's been, I started as a fan. That's what I want to say. I started as a fan. I'm here.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So it's, for everybody listening. So I've been working with John and his family for the last, 6 months or so, in planning the build of a new home. And we'll get into that. And what we're trying to do to make this not only a healthy home for you and your family, but also a model, an example for others, and really excited about what's going to happen there. But stepping back a bit, the life of a touring artist, it seems like to those of us who don't do it, which is all of us, except for you, we feel like it's glamorous. You're traveling the country, you're traveling the world, you're staying in hotels, you're being pampered and all that stuff. It's not that. It's rough, ain't it?
It is, dude. Yeah, I think there's there can be a misconception on, and obviously I'm not to the level of like Beyonce or anything. That might be different when you're flying on private jets and stuff. But for me, man, it was, the first, 5 to 8 years of doing this was just roughing it, like a bunch of guys packed into a van, driving all night, staying in, cheap motels. And then we slowly got to a spot where we could afford having a nicer bus. And even then, it's still late nights, not a lot of sleep, not eating the best, not taking care of your body, emotional stress too, because you're away from your family. And I'm a huge family man, having two kids. And so, yeah, it kind of culminated to a spot a couple of years ago where I was mentally, physically, I was just kind of beat down in a bad spot. And I thought, man, something's got to change. Like something's got to change. So that's when my wife and I started talking about, okay, like, what's our dream? Like, what do we really? What's our goal for our family as far as like where we want to live and how we want to do this thing? And we grew up in a small town in Georgia. It's beautiful. It's in the mountains. It's fresh air and woods and room to run. And we've been living in Nashville for years, and we love it here. It's a great city, but we just felt like we were missing that connection, like to our home, to our roots. And for our girls, like we wanted them to have like all those things that we grew up with. So that's when we started kind of kicking around the idea, what if we got a piece of land? What if we really like looked and looked to find the right piece of land with some privacy, with some space? And then we started building the house. What if we built our own house? And at first we were just like, let's just build what we want to build.
Mhm.
And then I went down the rabbit hole of meeting, Ryan Sternagel, and I didn't even know the healthy home building space was a thing. Like I didn't know what that was. I've never built a home, so I never had really thought about all the chemicals and all the toxins that you put into a home when you build a new one, let alone when you have an old one like what we've been living in for a while. So then I started listening to your podcast, started doing some research, and I thought, if we're going to do this thing, let's do it right. Like let's build it healthy for our family, for our kids, and ultimately, hopefully, for our fans and followers to see that it's not that hard. It's not an impossible task. And obviously, having Andy Pace on your team really really helps. But even if you can't do that, there's ways to do it. So we kind of want to be like a light and an example for those coming behind us to show them that they can do it too.
Yeah, it's interesting. You'd mentioned that you never really even knew that this was like the healthy home
Yeah,
industry existed, and that's I would say that's the same for just about everybody. If you don't go through the process of designing a home or building a home, if you are an apartment dweller, you live in a home that you never really even thought about it. It usually what happens is something occurs in
right,
life that is like this spark that says, and I work with a lot of people around the country who have some really debilitating diseases. And it's
right.
like, oh, they've been researching this for 20 years. I mean, I've been at it for 33 years and they've been researching it probably as long as I have. And so, that was that spark, the impetus to actually let's do something for us that is, actively healthier. And, it's also just life. Life just kind of eventually sort of beats you down a bit. And when
Yeah,
you're somebody like you, constantly on the go,
yeah,
and I know that when you're touring too, and I actually work with a couple of recording artists, touring artists that, you're living in a tour bus or you're living in a travel trailer, and again, it's not all glamorous, and it's hard on the body, and especially when you start to have kids and
yeah,
you start thinking about what's really important in life, and yeah, that can take a toll, and I think I mentioned on last week's show some health scare that I've been going through, and it's
yeah,
it makes you take a beat and wonder, well, what am I doing? Let's try something different, and then
yeah,
you go down the rabbit hole. You talk to Ryan and um, you and I start talking, and again, it's just you go down that rabbit hole of course there are healthier options for things. It's just we as consumers just don't automatically think that because
yeah,
we got so many other things going on in life.
yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of curious with all the research you started doing about healthy homes and so forth. I mean, it's got to be overwhelming to a point, uh,
Yeah.
but also I'm not patting myself on the back at all here. But then to have somebody who says, "Listen, I'll take care of this stuff. You give me what you're looking for. I'll give you the options. We'll talk about which ones fit right for you and your family, and then we go for it." So it takes a lot of the question out of it.
Oh, it's a huge relief. I mean, yeah, because it is so overwhelming. I mean, when we really went down the rabbit hole first of, okay, let's detoxify our lives from, clean food, water, air, even like our, clothing and detergents and cleaning supplies. I mean, just that alone is overwhelming for anyone to go through. Like, it feels. I remember there was one day where I was going through all these things, and I thought to myself, like, how am I ever going to like go through all this stuff and research enough to know, like, if I'm using, you just do the best you can, you just do the
Right.
best you can, take it a step at a time. I kind of like sectioned it off, like, okay, like now I have like the foods that these are my staples, like this is what I'm going to eat, this is my diet, and I'm going to make it as clean as I can. Same with the water and the air purifiers and everything. But when you start talking about a house, I
Mm.
mean, every single material you're putting in that house, you have to think, I mean, it's yeah. If as a full time, touring artist, working dad, like there's just no way like I would ever have time. So well, obviously connecting with you, Andy, has been like a huge blessing, and just being able to trust and like bounce things off of you and be like,
Yeah.
hey, like here's what we're thinking on beams. Like, would you do a steel beam? Would you do an LVL if we use an LVL? Like, what do we do? Like, you know it because you've been there, you're experienced. So yeah, man, it's just it takes a huge load off the plate. And to me, it was like you can't control everything. Like we live in a world now where there's going to be toxins around you in some
Mm.
capacity, but you surely like this one space that you can make as healthy as possible should be your home. I mean, that's where you're going to spend the majority of your life and your time. So that was our conversation when me and Hannah sat down. We're like, let's really take the time to make this because you only get one chance, when you're
Right.
building a house. Like you get that one chance. Like let's if we make a mistake here and there, or if we can't compromise on certain things, like that's fine. But let's as much as we can, let's really lean into this. So it's been awesome so far, man. I thought it would be stressful, but obviously having you involved has helped, and it's actually been fun so far.
Well, and that's good. You know, spoiler alert, it's not gonna be fun the entire time.
Yeah, yeah,
But so, I mean, I tell this to every customer I work with. There is no such thing as the perfect project. I mean, even on your project, we had a couple of hiccups already
yeah,
on things, but
yeah,
it's how you deal with it. It's how you move forward.
yeah.
You mentioned a couple of things that I just want to stress. And first is when it comes to like taking that first step, changing your laundry detergent in your cleaners and your skincare and your shampoo and all that. The first step is the hardest. The very first product you change is the most difficult because I think all of us just it's human nature that we have this desire to, if we're going to make a change, let's make a change. But if I don't take the first step correctly, am I going to either make things worse or it's just not going to matter at all? So why even bother? And so we kind of psych ourselves out of making changes sometimes. And honestly, anything you do in your home to improve the indoor air quality, the health of the occupants, anything you do, large or small, is an improvement. So I related to this. I remember back in the late 2000s, early two teens, when we were in this massive housing recession
Hmm.
and the construction industry was just down in the dumps. I remember sitting at my desk and saying, all right, let's think of this as a football game. Every time we have the ball, let's move the ball forward an inch. Let's just not go backwards. Just move the ball forward an inch and we'll get through this recession. And we did. The same thing is true in a healthy home. Just do something to improve. Don't go backwards. Once you start using the healthy cleaner, continue to use it. Don't just say, oh, well, I don't notice a difference, so I'm going to go back to the junk I was using because it is helping. And I think what happens is over time, it becomes easier to introduce new things, to introduce healthier items. And so that's a very important point you mentioned is just making those small changes to start will allow you to open up your mind to all these new changes you can make that are truly healthy.
That's what happened for me, man. That's what led me to you. It was just, a little bit at a time. And once I realized it doesn't all have to happen today, like I don't have to like change everything on a dime like right now. Like if I can take this, a week or a month at a time or a year at a time where I'm making little improvements, like that's all that matters. And at first I thought too, like, am I going to be, financially, you're like, that's a lot, when you're talking about switching to a lot of healthy products, it's a financial contribution to that. It's a commitment. But there are honestly a lot of ways to save money, and we've found
Sure.
in a lot of ways, where you're not buying these big name brands and spending as much money on a detergent or a cleaner or whatever. Maybe there's a healthier, a more homemade solution to a lot of these things. It kind of balances out, and that's what we've found.
Yeah.
So that kind of like squashed my fear of like having to, financially come up with
Sure.
ways to compensate. And there are like with a healthy home, I think, and I mean this is your area of expertise, Andy, but like I feel like there are some things that do cost a little bit more,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of stuff that are just quality products like across the board. So it's
Yeah.
like putting quality products in your home and they happen to be healthier and that's great, but they're also more quality and they're going to save you money in the long run because it's done properly.
John, it's almost as if you are going to be my number one salesperson because you're saying the same things I would say, which is remarkable. The fact is that the number one question we get, or maybe even pushback, is, well, if I build healthy, it's going to be it'll cost me more. No, if you build quality, it costs you more. It just so happens that a lot of these quality materials are healthier, and so I think of some of the paint products that we sell. Obviously, we're a big supplier of the AFM Safe Coat paint line.
Yes,
So,
love them.
uh, AFM paint, it's expensive, $70, $80 a gallon. Well, guess what? So is Benjamin Moore Aura and Sherwin-Williams Emerald.
Yeah.
All of these, what are called premium grade film products, are going to be $70, $80, $90 a gallon, even more. You're paying for the fact that 20 years down the road, you're going to get sick of the color on the wall before you ever have to repaint for any durability issues. It just so happens that the Safe Coat product is completely free of health hazards and completely free of chemical off-gassing. So, it's while we used to sell the product, and we still do, to people who have extreme chemical sensitivities, extreme types of health immune issues, it's also true that people buy it because it's just really good paint. And so if you compare that to $25 a gallon big box dirt and water in a can, obviously it's more expensive. But if you look at the longevity of it, the durability of it, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, and I think like what you're hitting on is something I want to talk about is like uh, whether you're doing a healthy home build or anything you're doing, you can usually if you pick a brand and you find a brand that you can trust, like an AFM, who we're working with throughout this project, thanks to you, Andy. And we've talked about Kime, we've talked about Amram. Like there's some brands out there that just make great healthy products.
Yeah.
If you get a brand you trust, you can pretty much just get behind that brand and say, this is what we're using for everything, or this is, and they kind of do a lot of the work for you because you can trust them. You
Yeah.
can go, so, you don't have to go digging around for a healthy material in each little section. Like once you get that brand and you can trust them, you're off to the races. So it's a real, and I think, from what I've found in my research, it seems like there's more and more brands that are like focusing on this because they see that there is a need that consumers are starting to realize, whether they have health issues or they just want to, create an environment that's conducive to like healthy living. There's
Right.
a market for this, and I think it makes it easier for us as consumers to be able to just trust those brands and be like, okay, like we found our thing we're going to use.
Yeah, it has become a lot easier for sure. I can recall, decades ago when I started the company, I had AFM Safe Coat products, and I had a brand called Forbo out of Europe. Forbo is a manufacturer of all natural linoleum, like not vinyl products, but true linoleum, linseed oil, pine resin, wood flour, mineral pigment spread onto a jute backing. And I still sell both those products today. But, that was 30 years ago. Today, I've got 125 manufacturers I work with. I've got thousands of materials right at my fingertips that I can recommend and provide for clients all over the country. It's gotten so much better, and anybody who is thinking about jumping into the waters of building a healthy home right now, I will tell you, without question, there has never been a better time to do it because of the availability of information, availability of materials, and I think a little more willingness for the contractors and trades to also come into this. And I know even with your project, I mean, you're sourcing out your contractors and your subs and this and that. I mean, how has that been for you working with the local trades?
Oh man, yeah, that's been the wildest ride so far, right? Like I think I called you like in a panic. I think I called you in a panic the day of or the day before. We were just about to pour concrete, and again, we're just in the very early stages of this project. Like we've got our foundation. We're working on rough plumbing. So, like you said, talk to me again in about 6 months. We'll see if this is any fun. But right now, it's great.
Right.
Yeah, I had a subcontractor, I had a contractor, a GC, lined up that was gonna, oversee the whole project, and it was a guy that I really admired and trusted. And he called me the day before they were about to pour concrete. He was like, "Hey man, like I'm so sorry to do this, but this project's just farther than I thought it was. It's going to be more involved. There's a lot of products you're using that I'm just not familiar with. A lot of
Yeah.
healthy products that I don't, I'm not familiar with. My subs aren't familiar with. I'm just going to have to bow out. Like I'm going to have to, back out of the project." And I was like, jaw drop, like, what do I do now? Like, oh no, like this is not good. I mean, you can't just go out and get a general contractor like
Right.
tomorrow. Like most of these guys and girls are booked up like a year or more in advance. So I just felt like it was like God speaking to me. I was like, all right, like you love control, like you love to like know what's going on. You just need to build this house yourself. You need to
Yeah.
be your own general contractor and lean on the knowledge of those around you, like Andy, and lean on your own research and your abilities. So I was just like, I made the decision then and there. I'm like, I'm gonna go get my own subs. I'm going to have knowledge of every product we're putting in there, and we're going to document it and film it because it might be a train wreck and it might be fun to watch, or it might work out good. We'll see.
It'll be entertaining either way, John.
Yeah, that's man. It's so far it has really been fun, and I'll say like the moment that I felt like I made the right decision. We were on site when they were pouring concrete, and I've got my kids with me. We're all there. We're looking at the plans. My girls are down in the dirt playing. Like my wife is over here talking about like, well, I want that. And I thought like this, like what better memory to share with your family
Yeah.
than to be standing here like at the bones of your house that you're hopefully going to live in forever and say
Yeah.
like we built that, like we did that, you know?
Yeah, it makes me think of how we do things here in our country, which is so impersonal. Somebody's going to build a home, and most people don't go through the process of building a custom home. They buy a
Right.
home model, or they buy, this builder has 15 different styles. We'll just choose one of these. And okay, here's the land we're going to put it on, and we'll come back every couple of weeks to take a look at it or whatever the case is, even if you're there every day. But they're not involved in the process. And, I've got a number of clients I'm working with now that are sort of in your same situation, which is this is almost like hearkening back to homesteading
Yeah.
from 100 years ago,
Yeah.
where we want to be part of it. We want this home not just to be a dwelling, but to be a home for our family now, to be a home for the girls when they grow up. I'm working with a client in Texas. It's like we want to design and build this home so that 100 years from now, our great grandkids are living here. Our great great grandkids are living here, and so I love that thought process because I think when we as consumers just kind of have a transactional approach to buying this house, but really have no emotional attachment to it,
Yeah.
it makes it really easy to make unemotional decisions about the products that we use. And for an example, you had mentioned, working with the Amram flooring product, the Wickander's wood cork
Yeah.
wood look. So something like that's going to last for a very, very long time in your house.
Yeah.
And you want to make a decision that you can say in 20 years or longer, I'm still good with my decision. And if you don't have that emotional attachment to the project, and I would say most of our listeners are in that boat of having that emotional attachment because they're doing this because of their health issues or
Right.
because of, wanting someplace healthy for their family to grow up in and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking generally speaking, we just have this, again, unemotional attachment to these things. It's if you're just buying some more stuff. And
Yep.
so I really appreciate your approach to this. And it's got to be, obviously, I mean, now you're taking on another role, and, it's like another full-time job. I don't
It
know
is.
how many hours you have in your day, John.
It's I know, man. It's I might when summer shows really start ramping up, and I have subs calling me like and they're needing answers. I might be regretting it, but I don't know. I think for now I feel good about the decision. And again, like I was one of those consumers. Like I was one of those people that just like it's a house. Like I don't know, that house looks great. Like let's buy that one. Like
Right.
that's kind of how we made our first house buying decisions up until now. But again, like thinking about the health of our family, thinking about our future, thinking about like you said, the long term and like what I want this space to be for us. Like I wanted it to be more than just a house, and I wanted to make those decisions that, like you said, that we would that we'd be glad that we made years down the road. And it was sort of dropped into my lap, this role, but I feel like a lot of the best things in life happen that way. You
Yeah.
know, you're never ready. Like I
Right.
wasn't ready for my kids. I was like, oh
Right.
no, what am I going to do? But it ended up being the best thing ever in my life. So I welcome that. Like, and I've learned to kind of welcome the unknown, and just trust. And obviously having you to lean into, Andy, like I can't even tell you, like you've become more than just like a mentor and a helper, like a friend. Like it really, like you've just been very great to work with. And I know your listeners, if they're anything like me, they do care about this kind of stuff. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. And like my whole purpose, I think, in doing this is just to let people know that if they are thinking about doing something like this, it can be done. It's not impossible. It's not as overwhelming as you think it is. And that's what I'm finding so far. If you can get a good support system around you, and and get a good vision of what you're wanting it to be, it
Yeah.
can be done. So that's I just want to shine a light on that.
I appreciate that. I do tell people all the time that, it's not just building the home, it's having that team around you. And, you had this horribly unfortunate situation where you lost your GC the day before the pour. But again, everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer of that. Everything in life happens for a reason.
Oh, we've already
And
seen it happen. We've seen for the better. I mean, when that happened, it set our schedule back about 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks, we had some really great brands come on board that wanted to support the build, and it was like that wouldn't have happened if we had just gone for it, and
yeah,
we'd been set on the products we were going to be used. If we've been set on that contractor, it honestly has already turned out for the better, and it's allowed us to take some more time to step back and live with the plans and be like, okay, is there anything else we're missing here? Are there any last minute changes or tweaks? So, I mean, now we've been, living with these plans for, 6 months, 5, 6 months.
mhm,
And it's kind of been nice to have that little bit of extra time. It's put, originally I was like hoping we would be kind of, in the framing stages by now. So we're about a month behind, but in the scheme of things, it's like 1 month. What's
yeah.
the big deal?
Well, that's it. Quite honestly, a month delay in
Yeah.
today's construction climate isn't all that bad.
Yeah.
And it does. It kind of gives you that opportunity to kind of take a step back and then have some extra views at things. And I know, you and I went through the plans just a few weeks ago, and we're like,
Yeah.
maybe these two areas should be switched. And
Yeah.
now that we had time to actually go through that, it allowed us the ability to take that I don't know, a different view of it, and it worked out to our advantage.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about, because you are obviously okay. So you're a full time dad. You're a touring artist. Now you're a full time general contractor, and you're also a prolific social media poster. I mean, you're
I
on
don't yeah,
social.
I wouldn't say prolific now. Come on, give me too much credit. No,
Okay,
that
so you're gonna be because I know how you want to document this whole thing.
yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I was very uncomfortable on social media just a few years ago, so it's been kind of a new thing for me. And honestly, during COVID, like, there was no way to tour, there was no way to play live music, so we kind of had to get more comfortable. Like I think a lot of people did have to step out of their comfort zones and find
Okay.
new ways to do things during that period. That's probably the only good thing that came out of that period, but it did allow us um, to really kind of hone in on our social side and say, okay, like we've kind of got this untapped tool here. Like, how can we use it as a resource?
Mhm.
How can I be organic to who I am? Because you see a lot of influencers out there just promoting brands, and that
Right.
nothing wrong with that. Like that's what some people do, and they're great at it. But for me, I wanted it to be. I'm a touring artist. I'm a singer songwriter. I'm a dad. I'm all these things first. How do I stay organic to who I
Yeah.
am, but also work with some brands that I believe in that could not only be beneficial to my fans, but also help them in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. So we really started. I'm a huge outdoorsman. I love all things like camping, hiking. Like I just grew up in the outdoors, which is a lot of the reason why we wanted to buy a piece of land and kind of get back to where we grew up because we were missing that side of things. But I thought, like, how do I tie in this world of like John as the singer songwriter, country artist, but also like the outdoorsman, the guy who just loves to be outside and camp and do all this stuff. So my wife actually had the idea. She's like, why don't you just start putting out some videos on socials of you just playing these songs with an
Mhm.
acoustic guitar around a campfire?
Yeah.
And it started as that. And I was like, okay, that's easy enough. Like that's how I started performing. It's just me and a guitar around a
Mhm.
campfire for buddies, like let's do that. And fans loved it so much that we actually ended up we're like, well, let's get a camper. Like, let's see if we can bring on an RV sponsor. And we brought on Cruiser RV. They've been with us for 5 years, and
Wow.
so like, let's start going to some cool places and like camping in different areas and seeing different things, and then recording songs there, and like seeing what that does creatively for me, like as a songwriter, and let fans see that in a different environment, like a song, around a campfire. So we called them campfire sessions, and now we're in our fifth year. And that series just like took off and did so well for us that we were like, I think we're kind of onto something with working with these brands that just really kind of show organically who I am, what
Yeah.
I love to do. And so when we started talking about the home bill, we were like, everybody is going to encounter this at some point in their life, whether they're renovating something, whether they're building a home, whether they're looking for a home, they just want to put healthier products in it. Like we could really help people with this platform. And so that's why we were like, let's document the process. Let's document the ups and downs, how things are coming, like what we're using, the brands we're loving. And so far, like it's been fun. We just, like we're just getting into the house stuff now. Like it's about to start. So it's a great time that we're talking about this. But in a few months, like I'm excited to like just kind of show like stage one, stage two, stage three, how we're doing this thing. So it's been fun so far.
Yeah, and so and I'll of course put all of your links to social media and so forth and your website in the notes. But when you follow John on social media, folks, you're gonna find that. And I don't say this because we're talking today. I say this as a friend. You're about as authentic a person on social media I've ever seen, and I absolutely love it because you follow your favorite bands and favorite singers and favorite actors and actresses on social media, and it's all about them, and what they're doing, and all the award shows they go to and whatnot. It's not real. It's just whoever their publicist is saying put this stuff up there to make you look good, and you're authentic, and that's what I absolutely love, and I'm sure my listeners will also love that, and I'm really excited to find out how this process goes. I mean, obviously, as your healthy home concierge and consultant, I'm very excited for you and your family to see how the project goes. But I'm also excited just as if I was a fan, and I didn't know you, I'm really excited to learn about how this project goes. And honestly, um, just as a little tip here, the good and the bad, the good, bad, and the ugly is one of the things when I do presentations around the country, I get great feedback on the things I talk about. I get the best feedback when people say, I really love how you related this to a problem that was occurring on a job site because I went through that problem too. And I love to hear how you got through it and, what the materials and methods were. And so I encourage you to talk about the downsides of some things too, because it really will help folks.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the general contractor thing, like at first I was like, man, what a pain. But now I'm like, that's relatable to everybody who's ever
Yes.
tried to get a sub or a general contractor or anything and had people back out on them. I feel, I've already talked to so many people who've had that same situation happen. It's just common, and it's good to know that, yeah, like we've gone through that problem. People go through it every day, and you can bounce right back from it, like no problem. Like it's going to be okay. We've had a lot of issues in the beginning, kind of the first 5, 6 months has been just prepping the land. It's so
Yeah.
raw, it's so beautiful, but at the same time, it's like when you go and get a piece of property that's undeveloped and
Mm.
hasn't been touched, it's like you don't know what's going to happen. Like when you start, trimming out a house site and when you start doing some grading. So that's been a fun process so far that we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about the struggles we've had with, like we've had to become erosion control experts and figure out the best ways to keep, because this piece of land, it's so raw. It's got these beautiful creeks that run through it. We want to keep those protected and safe. Like we want our kids to have clean, space. We want to do as stewards of the land and the home that we're building. Like we want to do our best at protecting everything and protecting the wildlife. So it's been. I just never thought that could be such a challenge, but that's
Yeah.
been step one already, a big thing that we're excited to talk more about. But I know obviously everybody's not, building on like, a larger tract of land. But even if you're building on just like an acre or a half acre, there's a lot of things you got to take into
Sure.
consideration before you even break ground.
That's a good point because when people look to buy a home building lot or land, sometimes these lots in a subdivision seem to be so expensive compared to just buying a raw piece of land. Well, that's because they've already improved
Yep.
it. They already put in sewer or septic. They've got, a gas line, electricity. They've got, it's either a well or it's on city water. So you start adding in 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 to the land price, and they got sidewalks and on all that stuff. And so when you're buying a piece of land in this beautiful, mountainous part of Georgia, and you look at the pictures and go, God, it's just absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to see what a sunrise is going to look like on top of this mountain. Okay, now you got to get equipment up there to clear it out, and now you got to
Yeah.
dig a well, and now you got to do this and do that. I mean, there is a lot involved, but and so these are the considerations to think about even before you buy land. One of the questions I get from potential clients is, my husband and I are looking at building a house. When do I get you involved as a consultant? And my response normally is, well, as early as possible if you feel like you need somebody to bounce ideas off of. But if
Yeah.
you already have your land, already have your lot, then get me involved at the design stage. But you and I had that ability to talk about. You had already bought the land, but when I first saw pictures of it, I mean, it was just an
Oh,
absolutely pristine a piece of land and full of trees and hills.
Oh, it was, yeah, you couldn't even see. It was so thick, the forest in there that you couldn't we honestly couldn't even figure out where the house site should be because it was so thick. Even with I took my drone in there to try to get like a reference of where would a house sit because it was so thick, just with, grass and weeds and trees. Like it's hard to tell. So luckily, we used a topography map to kind of find the high point on the property, and the high point, and we discussed this, and this was the great part about bringing you on early, Andy, is you were able to say, okay, if we get up on that high point of the property, that's going to really help with a lot of that erosion, carrying that water away from the house and the foundation. Because originally we were thinking about building more kind of down in the valley near the creek, but like then you got to divert all that water coming
Mhm.
down the hills away from the house. So we found a spot, and honestly, we didn't even think we had like any mountain view or anything. We thought it was just going to be woods. And then when you knock a couple small trees down and clear out a little, it was like wow, like now we've got view. And honestly, we were amazed. We were like, yes, this turned out so good. But yeah, it's been a lot of challenge as far as just keeping. We had to make a road. There was no
Yeah.
road there. We had to make a road in. So you talk about a lot of expense for a driveway, getting that, and it's a long road. We have to make the pads for the home and the carport, and then also, and you helped me a lot with this too, Andy. But we wanted to be on property and on site for a lot of the builds. So my plan was to have a temporary space set up, so we could kind of be there to meet subcontractors and kind of see the progress because we're in Nashville now. We're hours away, so I can't just like pick up the phone. Hey, we need you down here. I'll be there in a minute. It's not
Mhm.
like that. So we kind of decided to build a barn. We built like a barn on a property right below the house that ultimately we'll use for storing gear and storing equipment and stuff. But for now, we're going to park our camper down there, park our cruiser RV down there, and make a little like camping temporary setup. So you even helped me with that, kind of figuring out not only how do we make this house healthy, but how do we make our living situation healthy while we build? Which
Right.
there's just a lot to it. It's a lot of moving pieces.
Certainly. Yeah, for sure. So, I wanna talk a little bit about some of the products that, you're working with, some of the manufacturers you're working
Yeah,
with, because, this is obviously one of the number one questions we get is, "Okay, he's building a healthy house. What is he using?"
yeah,
How is he making it healthy? And understand that, you know, a lot of the clients I work with have very, very specific, like chronic inflammatory response because of mold exposure, or mass cell activation because of mold or bacteria or chemical exposure. You're building a home essentially to be the healthiest home possible for you and your family, right?
yeah.
And so we looked at obviously moisture mitigation, We talked
Yep.
about that with, landscaping and where you're building and reduction of the possibility of mold down the road. Um, and we then talk about the materials used on the inside because of chemical off-gassing, understanding that 90% of the chemical off-gassing that anybody's going to find inside of their living space will come from the things they see and touch on a daily basis.
Wow.
Usually it's flooring materials, wall finishes, cabinetry and woodwork, and then your own personal furnishings, your furniture, your area rugs, your window treatments. And so we have spent an awful lot of time discussing some of these things. Now, you're at framing stage right now. Your concrete was poured. You're just starting to frame. So a lot of the things we've talked about to get to that point have been taken care of. But when it comes to this 90% issue we're discussing, we've already started talking about these things because it takes a while to get into the plans. And then you're also working with a lot of these manufacturers to kind of bring them into the project for the whole documentation series.
Definitely. Yeah. You mentioned AFM, like they were probably the first ones that, that were on board. Jay and the team over there have been awesome so far. We're going to be painting some concrete this weekend, getting our floor ready
Nice.
in the barn. But yeah, AFM is just, I mean, they're a staple and we're going to use them all over the place. And then Kime Mineral Paint, we've talked about them.
Nice.
They are awesome, and they're in North Carolina, so just right up the road from us in Georgia. But I'm excited. I haven't seen that. We haven't gotten to like staining siding and staining, things yet. But like, I know their products are awesome, so I'm
Yeah.
excited. But there was another product you sent my way, Andy, that really, even initially in the process, you talked about concrete and like all concrete's not created equal either. I mean,
Yeah.
we had to really consider like we don't want fly ash in our concrete. We
Hmm.
want to try to eliminate like accelerants and retardants. So we, want a straight mix concrete. So we actually had to wait and pour on some warmer days in Georgia, and kind of wait for that cold weather spell to kind of get on past so we could use that straight mix concrete so we wouldn't have any off gassing, from our walls or our slab in the barn. So that was helpful. And then you mentioned a product Stego, which is like a vapor barrier. That's a
Yeah.
really nice vapor barrier. So we're going with them. Not only do they, prevent moisture from coming up under your slab and getting your home, but like also radon because
Yeah.
we don't really know. You're building on this raw piece of land. You would hope that you're out in the middle of the woods. Hopefully there's no radon, but who knows? Like you don't really know until you get in that home. So you kind of have to be proactive, right?
Right. Yeah, and you got to use a vapor barrier underneath the slab anyway. So
Yep.
why not use the one that has the ability to also block radon gas? It makes
Yep.
perfect sense. And yeah, you won't know what your radon levels are in the home until really you build the home and it's completed, and because the radon levels can change based upon even like the interior pressures of the home,
Yeah.
and it may change from room to room as well. And so
Yeah.
utilizing that complete vapor block underneath the slab just makes sense. For a few pennies more per
Yes.
square foot, it just makes sense.
It's one of those decisions that's just an easy, like, while we're doing it, let's do it. Like, that's kind of my attitude the whole process. Like, while we're doing it, let's do it
Mm.
right. Like, my
Right.
dad always used to say, if you're going to do it, just do it right. So it's like
Right.
that's an easy decision. So, and there are some things you come across that, like, well, when it's 10 times or 5 times the price, well, then you kind of have to weigh, like, is it really worth it? Like, or is it just like a hefty price tag? But some things like that, it's totally worth it. And same goes for like, AFM, like you said, like their pricing is right on par with like the big brand. Like, why not use a product that's going to be more quality and
Yeah.
healthier? And they have like every color you could ever possibly want. Like, so you're not limited in any way. Same with Kime. So those have been easy decisions. Flooring, you hit on the flooring. I'm excited about this cork
Mm.
flooring because,
Mhm.
and that's like I will say that's an unknown because I've never actually seen cork. I've seen samples now, but I have never like been in a home that has cork flooring. But all the samples, all the research, and you obviously you've seen it in homes, but like that sounds like it's going to be really fun and be a product that'll last forever. And we're grateful to Amram Wikander for doing that partnership with us.
Yeah, and I love that flooring in your particular application because you're going over slab on grade concrete,
Right.
and concrete is the hardness of concrete kind of telegraphs through some flooring materials, and so a lot of folks will go with hardwood, which is fine, or tile,
Yeah.
but cork has cork is a wood. It's the bark of the cork oak tree, but it's got the cellular structure of it has a little bit of vibration dampening. Now, this is why cork for years has been used as like a gasketing material or a sound deadener. You use it for a lot of things. You use it as a cork board in an office to kind of cut down on sound transmission between offices. So to use it as flooring material, it just actually makes for a sort of a warmer, softer, quieter space. You're not going to bounce on the floors, but if one of the girls would trip and fall on a cork floor, it's not going to hurt as much as tripping and falling on a hardwood floor.
Yeah, that was the selling point for us. We were like, having kids that fall 800 times a day. It's like, this is gonna be great. It's gonna eliminate a few bruises and scrapes, But, another thing for me, sound dampening. I mean, I eventually wanna have a nice, finished studio in the home, and we're gonna do an unfinished basement that we eventually kinda, do it up and make it nice and have a space down there. And, yeah, like cork flooring for sound dampening and for acoustics, like in a studio. As a musician, like that gets me excited because like normally, most studios I've been in, you maybe got carpet or something like that, or you end up with a hardwood floor. And like if you're tracking like this is getting into the weeds probably more than you guys care about, but if you're tracking like loud guitars or drums, the sound just bounces all over and
Sure.
it doesn't give you that good warm, a clean sound when you're tracking. So that's another bonus of it. Like I'm excited to kind of get into that part of it as well.
Well, I'm excited too because now that you say recording studio, because I'm building out a recording studio in our our corporate headquarters here, so I can not do my own podcasting in this office, so I can bring in guests, and make it more official. So I've been doing tons of research on sound dampening materials. I actually worked with a recording artist in California several years ago and started to learn some tricks. And so boy, I'm already thinking of your place now, John. It's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna love this.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna be able to help me when the time comes on that. I told my wife, I was like, that's like last on the docket of concern because we got to build a house first. That's like fun stuff that I get to think about, a year or two down the road.
Yeah, right. Oh, good. That'll be the project after the other project's done.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm finding is it's like, when you're doing a project like this, it never really ends, right? You're just constantly like adding and tweaking. And, my wife one day, she was like, are we just going to like be working on our house or the land like every extra day we have for the next 10 years? And I was like, probably so,
Probably.
in some way or the other, like,
Yeah.
with a project, but it's fun and it's rewarding work because like, it's part of that long-term vision for your family.
Yeah.
And it's, it's good for the kids. Like I've noticed that even in the early stages, like they really enjoy being involved, like just picking their room color. Like we were going through the AFM, like the color swatch, and Scarlett's like, I want dark purple, dark purple room. And we were kind of like, whatever, like you can pick your color, like sure.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
that's
fun.
great. Yeah, it's a family affair, It's getting everybody involved, and again, I can't think of of all the things that we are inundated in our society with, just from all different avenues. It's really nice to kind of harken back to something like this, and again, it's like you're a homesteader from 100 years ago or 200 years ago. But in today's day and age, with today's technologies, there's so many good, valuable life lessons in a project like this, and of course, they get to see their mom and dad going through this, and taking the bull by the horns and getting this project done, and yeah, that's something that for the rest of their lives they're going to remember and cherish.
I hope so, man. Yeah, and it's something I'm enjoying sharing so far and letting them have ownership in it. Even as kids, like it's something I would have loved to have been a part of as a kid, and I realized like it's a blessing. Like it's something that we have saved for our whole lives to be able to do this. Like this was our dream. Like my wife and I have been dating since we were 15. And
Hmm.
married now for over 10 years. So together over half our lives, and it's been a conversation we've had throughout our whole relationship. Like one day, like we want to find a piece of land. We want to build our home the way we want to build it. So this has honestly kind of been our dream since we were kids. So to see it finally culminating like into something real has been pretty special for us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, every time you and I talk, there's something else I find out about you that I go, yep, that's why we're friends. That's why we're working together. Yeah, my wife and I started dating in high school. I was 15.
Right.
Yep,
Well,
yep.
no way.
So
High School Sweethearts Club,
yeah,
man.
you got it. Now we've been married 32, 33 years. So it's like, okay, 32 years. Sorry, she's gonna kill me if I say 33. But
I'm surprised you got that close. I almost lose count. I'm only 10 in, man.
yes, no, it's fantastic, and so it's an absolute blessing, and we own this business together, and we work together every single day, and it's something that I absolutely cherish. It's the best thing in my life, and so for you guys to go through this together and to bring your kids into this, it's just again so many wonderful life lessons to learn, and I absolutely cherish this. And I'm so glad you're documenting it, and you're going to share a lot of this with your followers. So tell us a little bit about that process, how you plan to do that.
Yeah, I mean, across social platforms, I mean, we're active on Instagram, Facebook. YouTube is a cool platform for something like this too, because we want to show longer form content of like, the stages, right? So in our outline, like we kind of want to show this from the land stage, like, the whole process. And we've kind of started doing sneak peeks of that. If you go check out it's just at John King Country on Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. You'll see some clips there that kind of show you what the property looks like, some of the projects we've started and gotten into. But for the house, we really want to break it down into sections because it's so complicated and it's such a long process that if we were to just say let's just do a recap of the whole build, it would take 8-10 months, maybe more, to like be able to document that footage. We want to show as it's happening in real time, kind of. So we just poured our foundation. So we've started, we kind of want to talk about like foundation first, some of the things we came into, the framing, while we made these decisions. And we want to document videos and photos of that happening. And we want to talk about brands. Obviously, we talked about some of our brands once most of the brands are indoors once you start kind of getting your dry, structure. But there's a lot that we've been, working with like Stego, even on the build up to the foundation. So
Right,
we really want to just kind of like don't leave anything out,
right.
even the mess ups and the fun stuff. And yeah, hopefully it'll be more victories than
Sure.
losses. But I'm already set up for the fact that like we're gonna have some hiccups along the way, and it's gonna work out.
Yeah, well, that's a typical project, and there is no such thing as the perfect home building project. It's it's a constant set of challenges that you get better at working through,
Yeah,
and the team gets better at maybe avoiding the next one, because now we again working as a team, we all kind of know what we're looking for, what we're looking out for, and so as the project goes, it starts to get a little bit easier, and a little bit it'll be quicker, and hopefully by the time you start your summer tour, most of these challenges will be taken care of. So when does that start, John?
yeah. So it's gonna kind of time up. It's gonna be a crazy summer because kind of about the time right now we're concrete setting up, so we're kind of in that still wait around stage, but we haven't even really gotten to the fun part of like I've heard that once your framing starts, you
Hmm.
start feeling like, oh wow, like the whole structure is up and the roof is up and like we're
Yeah.
flying, like we almost got a house. And then it slows down. You get to
Yes.
your inside work and you get your plumbers and your
Sure.
electricians and your trades in there, and it just goes back to snail pace of like
Right.
getting the inside done. So I'm excited about that process. I'm excited to see it as a structure. And about the time we slow down and go to inside is when our tour is going to really fire up, like end of May, early June.
Okay.
Um, so we'll have to kind of time that out to where when we leave, and we leave everything in good shape, and we're going to make sure we have subs that we trust, and we
Sure.
know we're going to handle the job right.
And they'll have my phone number so they can reach out.
That's right. We'll have Andy. We'll have Andy. We'll try not to bug him too much, but we will have some questions. But yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge. Like I've really kind of had to. I mean, it's like a interview process to vet out subcontractors that, and just being up. I will say, like my advice to anyone out there who's getting subs who are going to do this type of building or even just like remodeling, or be upfront and tell them, hey, I'm doing this a little bit differently.
Hmm.
And if you don't want to do it, or if you're not comfortable with this, it's totally fine. Because the last thing you want to do is like get a quote, get somebody out there, and then be like, hey, like, oh, and I want to use this instead of what you might normally
Mm.
use here. A lot of guys or girls are just going to walk out on you and say, no, I
Right.
don't do that. You know? you know?
Yeah, and also, I guess the other side of that same coin is, um, you want to find contractors and subcontractors and suppliers that say, yes, I can do these things. And, sometimes it's hard to trust somebody or a contractor that you've never worked with.
Yep.
Um, but I think all of us kind of have this built-in, um, I don't want to say lie detector, but you kind of get that feeling like, okay, this person understands what I'm trying to do. And if they start offering suggestions like, well, I've been looking at this and maybe here's a way we can go, and you understand, or you feel that they get you. And so,
Yeah.
and I talk about this all the time with clients, you got to have that team that you're comfortable with. And I'm dealing with a client right now on the East Coast who's building a home, and they're having some issues during the construction project because of some really obscure weather issues they had there, that now is causing moisture coming into the house. And you got
Wow.
to understand these things will happen, but if you got the right people around you, it'll be worked out. We'll figure it out, and then we'll be able to move on.
Yeah.
Is sometimes in a project like this, you have to take a step backwards. You think you're taking a step backwards to take two steps forwards.
Yeah.
And that is going to happen on a project. And so as long as everybody's kind of clear about that from the start, you hope there aren't any surprises.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to be proactive too, like trying to get, I'm still probably, a couple 3 months out at least from even needing some of these subcontractors, but trying to get them on the schedule, trying to get the project in front of them, the plans, and just uh, to let them know like it's going to be a little more involved, and sometimes that might cost you a little more labor wise here or there, for certain things. So far it hasn't seemed to be too much difference, but yeah, just getting subs, and for me on tour, like I'm going to have that team in
Yep.
place that I can trust while we're on the road. But I will manage it as good as I can, kind of remotely while we're on the road, and do check-ins when we get back. And it'll be an interesting summer because normally we pick up and we go, like we're going all summer, maybe 3 months,
Mm,
4 months sometimes.
yeah.
So this is going to involve a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of checking in, and having people on the ground that we can trust. But I'm excited about it, man. Like to me, it's not only like fueling me, just like giving me just an exciting new job and a new adventure that like I've never thought I'd be involved in, but creatively, like too, like on the music side, it's funny how like it seems like I'm normally left brain, songwriting,
Hmm.
touring. This is turning on my right brain, like my contractor brain, and it's kind of like helped bring in new ideas and new inspiration that like I don't know how. It's like as a kid, I used to cut grass for a living. Like, I would get great ideas when I'm on the lawnmower, just like
Sure.
cutting grass, like not thinking about writing a song. Like, and I
Yeah.
get great song ideas. So I've kind of like gone back to the old me in that way, to where it's like
Oh.
I'm out here, working on the land or doing erosion control, and I'm getting great song ideas. So I kind of like I love that part of it.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. I mean, I as somebody who I'm not musical whatsoever. I love music. I don't play any instruments. I used to sing in a band in high school, but that goes way back.
Oh, I
And
got
I
to
don't.
hear that. You got to dig some of that audio up for us.
No, you don't. The good thing is, back when I was in high school, we didn't have cell phones that recorded everything.
Oh, that's
So,
true.
darn it, nobody's gonna hear that. But I do write. I write a lot for publications, and you're exactly right. When something happens in life that completely changes your perspective of thinking, or accesses a part of your brain that you never thought would be accessed, it does help all around. And so I'm excited to hear what comes out of you and your guitar coming up. I'm excited for everybody. I can say anybody who's listening, I'm really excited to see the progress reports, the videos, everything like that, because this is a project that obviously I'm involved in, but
Yeah.
as a fan, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see what's next, and hopefully sometime soon I'll be able to actually visit the job site.
Yes.
I'm coming down in August and in November for some
Oh,
events in Georgia. So yeah, you might see me on site.
well, August we should be hopefully rocking and rolling, and it should start, to look like a house by that point with some,
Perfect.
getting everything inside. But by November, I mean, maybe, I mean, we might be really, really close on,
Yeah.
by November. So that's, maybe I'm not like getting my hopes up, but I'm like, if we can be in that 6 to 8 month window,
Sure.
I would love it. But I'm kind of like saying like, okay, if it takes a year and we have to
Hey,
do some things and we have some setbacks, like in the grand scheme of things, that's okay. So
better to
that's
be
kind
pleasantly surprised
of,
than
yes.
disappointed, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's my whole mindset. But no, man, we were excited to get you down there, Andy, and it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a busy year, and it's kind of stepping into the unknown for me. Like this is a project that I've never done, and it's content I've never done. But I just think that fans are going to love seeing that like raw, organic side of like, hey, this is something I'm passionate about. It's helping me creatively. It's bettering my family, and it can better yours. And like it could be something that maybe it's something little, like maybe it's somebody who has a room in their house that does have mold toxicity, or maybe it's been something they've kind of been putting on the back burner. Like, don't wait any longer. Like, don't be afraid of like kind of stepping into it and just and doing it and reaching out to an expert like Andy, reaching out to these brands that have products that can help you. Like, don't wait, just do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John, honestly, because, it's people like you and your family that are going through this and then can use your platform to educate others. And it's just, I applaud you for doing that, for making that commitment. The entire industry thanks you for that. And again, looking forward to seeing what comes out. And we'll definitely have you back on the show as we get along in this process so we can kind of talk about, maybe late summer after when you're back from touring,
Yeah.
and we can sit down and talk again, what's happened, where we're at, what are the pros and cons, the ups and downs, and give us all a report.
We'll see if my hair is like completely gray then. Right now, I've still got brown hair. We'll see in a few months.
Yeah, well, mine's almost completely gone from pulling it out over the years, so I hear you.
There we go. We'll see what happens. An update coming in a few months.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you
Uh,
having me. Thanks for everything.
all right, we'll talk soon, my friend.
All right. See you, buddy.